Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Revenue Hacks. We missed you all last week. Legend has it, Christina is still recovering from St. Patrick's Day, so as you'll notice, she's not on our panel today. But we do have a masterclass on Google Analytics and Facebook ads with Harry Fielder of UMI Digital in the house today. And first, we'll go around and introduce ourselves. The redhead is back, so we'll start there.
Hi everybody, this is Silvia Cantarella. I'm in revenue management since 16 years now and founder of Revenue Acrobats. And I'm the redhead, as you can see.
Great. Am I next?
Yeah, go for it.
My name's Harry Fielder. I run a business called UMI Digital, and we do marketing and software development and website development for the hospitality and travel sector. So it's a bit half and half. We try and approach marketing and tech in fairly equal measures. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Good to have you. And Mr. Thibault.
Yeah, my name is Thibault Catala. I'm the founder of Catala Consulting. We do revenue management, consulting, and also revenue management for hotels across Europe. So everything revenue management, distribution, and yeah, glad to be here.
All right. Well, as always, we will be giving away a mug at the end of this show. So please be sure to send in all your comments, questions, and let's get this show rolling. I think we'll let Harry pick today since he's the guest. And so what we do, Harry, is whoever sends in the best questions, the most interactions, the most thought-provoking comments gets a free Revenue Hacks mug with their choice of either my face or Christina's face. So
great. So I decided at the end, right?
Yes. Yeah, we decided at the end.
Perfect.
So we'll jump right into it with just something pretty generic as far as your world goes. How important is digital marketing now in this new landscape, and has it changed during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the key with digital marketing during the pandemic is that the buying cycle itself never stopped. When hotels closed and when everything closed, we just assumed that everything went on ice. Right. But actually, in reality, what happened was that everyone was stuck at the beginning section of the buying cycle. OK, so the buying cycle, just as a refresher, we kind of go from the awareness. So we're aware we need to do something. We have the research phase, the decision phase, the purchase. Right. And then the stay and then the post stay. So we kind of go through all of those phases. Right now. The problem with the pandemic is that everyone was stuck at that decision phase. They couldn't actually purchase because there was no confidence on timings. It was also not possible to actually purchase because there was no availability. But it didn't stop was the fact that people were still in that inspiration, research, and decision-making phase. People were still planning what their dream holiday would be. They were still planning on where they wanted to go, what they wanted to experience. And I think that what we've seen retrospectively over the last year, and it was really evident in August actually, which was the hotels and properties that didn't move budget or keep some level of investment in the research and discovery phase of the buying cycle were left when things opened up again with a very, very I guess a naked sales pipeline, because all of the leads that are normally fostered through, just through normal awareness campaigns, right? They'd all been stopped in a lot of cases. And those that kind of kept on, behind the scenes, this is what our chef's developing for when we open up again. All those sorts of interesting content that played on that awareness and discovery actually meant that the bookings, when things opened up again, the rest of the sales pipeline, the rest of the purchase journey flew. People flowed through far easier, and we're seeing that now again. We've got this second wave of this where it's starting to open up again. But for those people that perhaps didn't put much into the inspirational content, the awareness content, it means there's a bit less to. It means that things like price advertising and the more of the decision point marketing is less effective because we haven't actually built the awareness phase, right? So it's going to be, it still has a place throughout the pandemic. And for those that we've got a very clear correlation between those that paused everything and the subsequent bookings when we reopened up, and those that actually kept that inspiration and awareness going, and the extent to which their bookings picked up when things were opening up again. So it's hugely relevant. You know, naturally the tactics are likely to change quite a lot. You know, we've got some new tools from Google. We've got OTAs changing the way they do things. You know, everyone's bundling a lot more, packaging a lot more. So, you know, if we're just purely selling, if we just focus it with a very blinkered room only point of view, I think that's going to massively change soon. So that will change things. But yeah, again, hugely important throughout the pandemic for those reasons, really.
When you talk about awareness, sorry to interrupt. When you talk about awareness, is it you're talking about social media? You're talking about Facebook, Instagram, or what kind of awareness can we leverage, or what kind of channels can we leverage here?
Sure. So awareness in general is kind of just extrapolating out from we're not talking about the channel necessarily when we're thinking about awareness. Awareness is more the person, right? It has been triggered to travel. Okay, whether that's seeing an amazing place on TV, or they've realized that they've actually got a meeting over in the States and they need to go and find a hotel over in the States. That's that awareness piece. That's that internal customer moment that forces them into travel, right? The content that we need to deliver at that point is very different to the content that we need to deliver when they're at the decision phase, for example. So the types of content need to be very aspirational. So selling a destination as opposed to facilities, selling the city as opposed to the room. And there are certain channels that work really well for that. Like, is Twitter the best thing for that? Probably not. Is Instagram stories good for that? Yes. Facebook kind of sits a little bit between the two, I think, on that one. And I would say the richer the content, the more aspirational and inspirational you can make the messaging, and that's generally more suited to the earlier stages of the buying cycle. So when we think about Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, that tends to really work well for that early stage. And then as we go, through to search advertising, when someone's actually actively searching hotels in London or hotels near, in Kensington High Street, they're actually quite, they're not at the awareness phase. They're actually quite into the buying cycle there. But that search advertising is not rich content, but it is a fantastic source of traffic. So as I would say, as we go along that buyer's cycle, the advertising and the messaging becomes less media rich and more informational. So typically the budget that we allocate to different phases of the buying cycle needs to be spent on different platforms, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? So yeah, and I think price advertising and Google Hotel Ads is a great example of decision point. We are about as far along that decision-making process as we can feasibly market, which is why that price and facilities and everything, that's why it's not rich content, but it's incredibly informational, but it works at that point.
Actually, Harry, I've got two questions. I'm the one making a lot of questions here. So you say it right, we need to really keep the awareness and the engagement going in order to have the people follow us and then be ready for when they will be ready to travel. And so getting it right, it's right, it's really critical. As I remember that I saw properties advertising offers or anything where people could not travel, and they were insulted on the social media and everywhere because they said, why are you sending out these offers? Absolutely. So my first question is, did you see any macro trends, big trends changing during the pandemic, the way we target our customers because the profiles have been changing? And the second question, as you talked about Google Hotel Ads, is what do you think about Google free placements? I want to have your point on that.
Cool. I'll address them in two different answers. So the first one around macro trends. For me, so one trend I'd like to just put in, how you were saying it's really frustrating that people were, marketing and people couldn't execute on that. We saw some amazing cases where hotels were shut, but they ran an incredibly successful campaign around gift vouchers and, dream now, have it in the future. Here is a really carefully selected, carefully packaged offer that's going to really help us as a hotel through this pandemic. We're an independent, as an example, it's tough for us, but we promise to give you an amazing experience in due course. We had some hotels that actually covered their hotel overheads, their non-furloughed overheads, through offers like that. And it's incredible to see. And I think then there was a wave, I think throughout like April, May, June, of everyone suddenly going, crap, we needed a gift voucher system because we need to be able to do that. And we created a quick solution for some hotels to do that. And that was really cool to see. But in that, the only way, people weren't just buying like monetary vouchers. They weren't just saying, I want £100 worth of rooms. It actually forced hotels to think of really innovative, cool packages. And here is something that you're not going to be able to buy again. It's completely unique, and it's going to help us through the pandemic. And if you buy it, it's going to really help. But people, they had the time. Yeah, they had the time to really think about it, and they needed to stand out in this instance because they were forced to stand out. But that mentality of that actually really played into the right areas, because I think people now more than ever are looking at destinations and experiences. They're not viewing booking as a commodity. And if you look at the macroeconomic trends of Expedia, Booking, Google, everyone's working to aggregate all of the different travel verticals into one experience, right? You can you've got like Journey. I know Suzanne with Journey, who's I know on your shows quite a lot. Like what the idea of their booking solution, which is to aggregate parts of an experience into one carefully curated package, right? And that's what you can see all the big players doing it. But the mentality of what we want as bookers is leaning towards that. And so I think where we've seen the most success is as people open up again, like being way less commodity minded around the rooms, and like local partnerships, for example, the success of those. And we've done a big piece of research recently, which was exploring what's important to people booking weekends away, booking staycations. And one of the things that, as we were doing all of these screen recordings and interviews, the thing that kept on coming up was, I want to know what's on in the local area. I want to know and the offers that people were drawn to were ones that were carefully curated with local partners, like gin, a local distillery, or walking, you get bread delivered from the local baker, and then you can go on a walking tour to the pub that we're partners with, type thing, and really curated destination focused offers. And it was like, I knew that was a bit of a macro trend, but what I didn't realize was the extent to which it was in the mindset of every single person that we interviewed and spoke to.
Yeah, that was really big, especially in the beginning. It was all about supporting local business, and that became in the mindset of, I think, everyone. So that's a great point, and that's something I was discussing with a client just a week ago about, these are some ideas. And you also mentioned it in your talk there about being creative and coming up with different packages. Bed and breakfast isn't going to cut it anymore. We need to get a little bit more creative than that. And because it was already a very competitive landscape, but even more so now.
Yeah. And it's actually an area of competitive advantage. No OTA knows your area like you do.
Exactly.
And remember, you don't have to give the OTA everything. You can, there's a lot of stuff that you can do that as a direct benefit, right? We will sort out, if you come direct, this is what you get. You can go buy the room through booking.com, but it's an incredibly compelling reason that the OTAs just don't have the capacity. They don't have the means to carefully curate every single property with local products and local produce. And that's your source of, that's your secret sauce, right?
Do you think the trend will be more focused on book direct and OTA in the future, or post-pandemic? Or do you think it will remain as a balance?
I think if hotel, and this goes back to pre-pandemic things, the cleverer that you can be with book direct benefits, and I'm not talking like will match the price, or you get a, I don't know, you can check out an hour later or something. I'm talking about actually carefully curated experiences. The more people can get in that mode, if I think this has just shocked the industry into it as well. I think before this, it still made a massive difference if you were doing this, and it would still give you a competitive. You would still start driving more direct business, but I think it's shocked people into it as well, and that kind of goes alongside the fact that we've got these macroeconomic trends of people Expedia, Google, etc. bundling. Like if we think Google Flights, we've got Google Hotels. Airbnb have obviously launched they've had experiences going for years. Everyone's trying to, the game now is not to own a travel vertical, it's to own travel, right? It's not, we're no longer, and as an independent, the goal is not to own the travel vertical. We need to own the guest and their whole travel experiences, which is why as a hotel, we need to also be thinking about, okay, well, we need to consider all the decision points that guest is going to go through. So how are they going to book flights? How are they going to travel to us? Where are they going to eat if they don't want to eat in the hotel? Where are they going to leave the
knowing the customer? It's all about knowing our customer, how their needs have been changing and how we can best target them. And in regards to this, we have a question from Paula here. Should hotel tag long tail keywords? I mean, it's hard to compete against OTAs in hotel in Boston, right? And this is also linking then to the second question about Google Hotel Ads and biddings.
Yes, very much so. The reason why is because you're like going for, you're never going to do hotels in London, primarily because you're never big enough, and no independent's big enough to go for very sweeping keywords. Unless you are a large group, there's just very, very little success in it. Long tail and evergreen content is wonderful to see. And you can, like, if you look at the Corinthia as an example, their guide to London is amazingly cool. It's wonderful. If you want to look at an example of like really good evergreen long tail content, that's fantastic, because it's useful year in, year out. And what it does also is caters to voice search as well. I think our searches generally are getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And that's partly to do with voice, but also partly to do with people are just searching in different ways. And long tail keywords is an answer to that. And I think search is becoming a lot more question and answer based as well. So making sure on every single page, we've actually got a set of question answers like Q&A. And so TripAdvisor, for example, quite a lot of the time, if you ask a question about the hotel, a rich snippet will come up from the TripAdvisor FAQs at the top of Google, because they've optimized for question-based search, which is quite powerful. What is Silvia saying? I have superpowers too.
Pop up the questions.
Okay. Cool. But no, to your point about Google Hotel Ads, I don't know if we move on to that one as well. Yes, I think I've been frustrated by Google Hotel Ads for a while, because it is really cool, right? But it's been dominated by connectivity partners. And if as an independent, you have to go through a connectivity partner to actually achieve this. So your channel managers, who may be connectivity partners, I'm not going to name names, but they're going like, okay, we'll charge 16% for connectivity to Google Hotel Ads. And I mean, it's annoying, because you've got like, I'm on the agency side, but I'm also not a software provider. I'm an agency. So I kind of, from a hotel point of view, it is frustrating, because you've got all this opportunity, but you have to go through a third party. The next step that's really exciting for me is, first of all, the kind of self-serve option of free placement. So actually being able to, as an independent, I can control my own destiny and list my prices in your platform without the need of a connectivity partner. Second is there are tools coming out now which actually commoditize that connectivity. So rather than having a premium service through your channel manager or through your booking engine that's going to cost you quite a lot, It's just connectivity because it's assumed, right? So an example like Chanex.io, for example, they've launched a freemium channel manager that does connectivity to Google Hotel Ads out the box. So you control all your ads as an independent, or obviously with an agency support or whatever. And the connectivity is just assumed. And that's where, you go back a few years, that's where e-commerce was. So now connectivity is assumed. It's assumed that you can get products from Shopify into Google Merchant at the click of a button. It's assumed that you can get products from WooCommerce into Facebook catalogs, product catalogs. It's just, and I think that's where we're seeing now is the availability and rate and inventory, the connectivity into third-party platforms like Google Hotel Ads, like other channels, is going to become far more open, and that's going to allow hotels to actually take control of their own destinies rather than being governed by, which is basically an oligopoly, because it was literally like getting blood out of us. Trying to get as a connectivity partner on Google, it was really hard to do. We never tried to do it but through the various people I know, it was hard to do, because it was a beta program until it's still kind of a beta program because it's still quite locked down. And I guess it's exciting to see it come out of that, if you know what I mean. So for people like us who manage accounts, we're not the connectivity person themselves, but we manage them. It opens up a huge amount of opportunity because the return on advertising spend now doesn't have to include the connectivity fee. And we'll see, even if we were seeing 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 20 to 1, in some cases on Google Hotel Ads, that's going to be, all of that connectivity goes straight to the bottom line, and it just takes that up, which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Go, Calvin.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just indeed my next question. I got another one, but then I mute myself. I promise was indeed about ROI and expectations. So I see that you're embracing this enhancement of Google about free placements. But indeed, my always question was about how are we going to measure the correct ROI? How is it going to work? Is it really going to pay off? So I know that also Thibault has a lot of questions about measurements and these kind of KPIs. So I
will just mention one thing that I'm embracing it. I think it's exciting. I think there is a larger underlying thing here where ultimately Google is taking, you can actually, you can book all this stuff through Google. And so middle of 2019 was, that year disappeared, didn't it? Yeah, middle of 2019 was the first time in the history of search that we had more than 50% zero-click searches. And what I mean by that is more than 50% of searches never left the Google infrastructure. Okay, so we think of Google as a distributor of traffic, but actually it's less of a distributor of traffic than it is a person that hangs on to traffic. Okay, so we kind of changes our mentality around what search is, and I think where that you've got that trend there, and then you've also got like very open price advertising and subsequent booking, is that Google has they've had the potential for years to do it, but you've got the case that booking and Priceline and the various players ultimately pay billions in ad revenue, so they're not going to do it in a hurry until they're absolutely sure. But I think there's a much bigger Google move at play than just this. And you look at like Google Maps. What was started out as a glorified sat nav is basically going to be their version of WeChat. It's going to be their super app that you can ultimately do everything through, which you can do a lot through it now. But that will be the home for hotel bookings, flight bookings, travel booking experiences, all integrated into your Google Pay wallet, right? So that's the bigger play. But it is exciting in the short term.
I leave it up to the guys to make questions, but guys, as I hear the people are very silent, please make questions. Otherwise, it's always their head at making questions and talking today. Feel free to ask questions and put in the comments on LinkedIn for Harry, and let's take advantage of these great speakers. And now I leave it up to Calvin and Thibault.
No, I was going to say, yeah, we need more audience participation because we're gonna have to ship like 10 mugs to Silvia. So yeah.
I still have to have one. So.
With your own face. Or is it your face, Calvin, and Christina's face? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's fine. That's done deal. But I wanted to know a little bit more about, you know, the new changes with Google and meta search, and, you know, their free meta search now. How exactly does that work, and how would that benefit smaller independent hotels?
Sure. So in the same way that we have organic listings for search, right? We're not going to ever outcompete or outplace paid for listings through Google Hotel Ads. We're not going to, you know, the premium stuff is likely to be on top and likely to be the most clicked on stuff. But if the connectivity is there, then it will still, you know, we'll still have an element of visibility from a price point of view. In terms of exactly how that works, it's still a little bit unsure as to all the science. I mean, there's been years and years of organic search listing sites to bounce off. This is obviously quite new. But I imagine there will be an area around optimizing for that. I don't know how one would optimize too much organically for price listings, because there's not a huge amount of you know, information to go by apart from a price and a rate type, I guess, or the name of the rate code. But I think that the self-serve element, that's sort of quite an exciting thing for independents, because they can actually control their own rates through that. And the ability to have a dashboard where we can log in, can, you know, edit our price listings in the same way. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's, well, I don't know this, maybe someone does, but it's very, very, I think it'll be very similar to Google My Business, in the sense that you can go in and edit all the facilities around your business, like have you got a spa? What facilities have you got? Your opening times? Do you accept American Express? All that kind of stuff. So that dashboard there, it's just empowerment. It's just going to give hotels a lot more control, because previously it's only been a paid thing to actually list there. So there's never been an organic element to it, which is kind of different, because, you know, Google search always started from organic, and then they introduced advertising. This has started from advertising and introducing organic. So nobody really fully knows how it will fit together. But yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, particularly if hotels can control it themselves, or albeit with hotel support, and it takes the rug out of the people that were controlling that feed for a long time. And credit to them, because they built those connections and they went through the process of getting accredited. So that's fine. I'm not knocking it. It's just every industry goes through a period of transition from a few limited suppliers to lots. We've seen Opera. Okay. You only have one PMS option, basically, through to, okay, shit, there's a few options out there, kind of thing.
I can follow up on this one because I believe there is a lot of synergies between digital marketing and revenue management. How do you see, and we had a conversation offline, which I believe is very important to mention here. Where do you think we can leverage this kind of relationship between digital marketing and revenue management, and what do you think the future will be for those two departments? Together.
Yeah, so I think it cut out a little bit there, Thibault. So could you just repeat that final part of the question?
Yeah, my Wi-Fi is really bad. I apologize. But I was saying, like, what do you think will be the future of those two departments? Do you think they will be working more together, more in automation, as we discussed, or do you think they will be completely separated and in their own departments?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, something that can happen now, like straight away as a best practice, is make sure that your marketing team see the production report every week. Because you'd be surprised, I think, at how many marketing executives and marketing managers do not know a daily or at least weekly view of what's coming up. And I know that a lot of places do it, but there are also a lot of places that don't do it. Second of all, if you are using outsourced ad management, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Google or whatever, does the person that's managing the bids on those keywords and or price advertising, do they have access, and are they seeing that production report in real time, or at least weekly? Because, you know, with Google Ads, naturally you flex. If you know what you're buying, you know what your average booking window is, you can very much tailor your ad strategy around around demand, right, or around supply and the image, the production report. So that is a first tip, because too often they do not talk to each other, far too often. And also, going back the other way, the demand that we see in terms of search volume, in terms of interactivity on the site, and you can see a lot of macro trends. Is that informing revenue? Like, are we telling revenue that there's been a massive spike for interest in this, or a massive spike in, people are looking far more at this package, but then they're bouncing. They're not leaving the site, or they're leaving the site. Revenue should know that, because that directly informs what their strategy is. And so there's a two-way conversation that needs to happen very, very regularly, both on a revenue, the revenue team from a production point of view, informing that ad strategy. And with Google Hotel Ads, it even comes down to, on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, what is your ad strategy based on production?
I love to have the Google Analytics. Yeah, I love to have the Google Analytics on the review meetings, because we can discuss which kind of geo mix is coming to your website, what kind of conversion we can expect, and those kind of things can lead and change the strategy that we can have on the revenue side. So I think it goes hand on hand. Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, and just in terms of that, I think we also need to get out the mentality of setting an advertising budget. I think if we quite a lot of hotels still say to us, okay, we've got £1,000 to spend, or £2,000 to spend, or £500 to spend on ads. Whereas I'd much prefer the question to be, I would like us to achieve 10 to 1. And if you can do that, keep going until such a time as you don't. Okay. But that's in terms the way hotel budgets are set annually, and they're signed off by the owner, usually. It doesn't work like that, because they need to know what the expenditure is. And so it's a slightly chicken or the egg thing, in that how do we get more advertising budget, but also because it has to be signed off. But you just need, I think there needs to be some forward-thinking owners to maybe set a precedent. And there are, if we look at Booking.com, they will spend and spend and spend and spend on ads until such a time as they do not make their accepted level of return on advertising spend. And there's no upper limit on it. It's just we will go until we reach our diminishing, a point of diminishing returns. So it's that whole mentality shift between budget setting and marketing performance assessment, basically.
Yeah, it always shocks me, how little revenue management and a lot of companies get involved in that stuff, where there's so much information there to source what it is we need to do. We're here to sell rooms. So how do you sell rooms? Who are you selling them to? How do you figure that out? You need to monitor this stuff. I can remember at a hotel I worked at, where we were able to really boost our conversion by 6% by putting a banner ad, because we just started looking at the information and knowing what packages that these guests were clicking on, just looking at the website behavior. And I think it leads us into a good question we got a few minutes ago from Raul. Do we think the requirement of outsourced revenue management and digital marketing will see a rise instead of having a dedicated resource? And I believe it probably means on property.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the revenue management piece is something that I have limited, pure revenue management, I have limited experience in. But what I was having a good conversation with Adrienne from a revenue management tool called Right Revenue the other day. And her goal in her platform, one of her primary goals, is to bring in as much marketing data into the RMS, right? And so things like, Google Analytics has an API. We've got pixels running on most sites, right? Why do revenue management platforms not have pixels? They should do, really. And if we think about what actually makes up revenue management, it's an analysis of demand and pricing accordingly, right? That's a massive determinant of demand. So, or a trigger, or what do you call it? Symbol, I guess. It's a way of analyzing it. so I think the connectivity, and I saw another from Liliana actually saying, is digital marketing a necessary skill in revenue management? I would also put that vice versa. I think understanding how revenue management works is also an essential part of digital marketing, and making sure that they have the production reports and making sure the campaigns are entirely revolving around how, it needs to be real time. It needs to be real time.
I can add on what Raoul mentioned about the outsourced management and digital marketing. I believe we have seen for us an increase of requests for the outsourced management model because people are looking for more flexibility contractual. So I believe people are looking for a digital extension of the team, so not to replace anyone, but more to support the team, which most of the time are operating nowadays at the skeleton level. So yes, I believe there will be an increase of outsourced management model and digital marketing. So any kind of back of the house position that you can have and you can outsource, I believe there will be an increase of this kind of support, mostly because it gives us flexibility and not to have anyone on payroll fully fix fees. I believe that's what people will be looking at for the next few months at least.
And it'd be a great challenge just to get your digital marketing execs to sit with revenue for a week.
The pandemic was actually like the perfect storm to bring finally digital and revenue management together, because if you see how our jobs changed over the past year, we just don't have any more reports on revenue management to run at the moment that are enough for us to understand what's happening. So we of course need to look into the digital marketing. It's totally necessary. And we have more questions coming up. So we have, I don't know if you guys picked some. There's Anna said, saying that non-independent hotel will be able to compete with OTA budgets in terms of Google Ads. You can influence it by making sure that your hotel is on the top of TripAdvisor, Booking, Expedia, etc. listing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, optimizing within an OTA is. Are we saying, are we on the top of TripAdvisor? So we can always outbid them if we're doing branded search, and you will always have a higher relevance score. You'll be able to achieve a better cost per click than an OTA will, because your site is always far better optimized for your own keywords than any other site is. So there's all branded search terms. Again, that's something that Booking.com has already switched on. They're already running branded search. So if you did pause your branded search advertising throughout the pandemic, that it's time to very much switch that back on now, because that is your first line of defense, right? But also optimizing within the OTA, optimizing your Booking.com and your TripAdvisor listings and everything. That's a massive thing. I personally, obviously it's not quite digital ads related per se, but it is it's hugely important thing. That's something I envy, and that's something I'd love to learn more about this year personally, is actually optimizing organic listings within those platforms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a great question here from Giannis. I'm really interested to hear your answer on this one. What do you recommend showing in your Facebook ads? Just your facilities, or do you need to include a discount offer to improve conversion? Cool. So back to the very first part of this conversation, which was around what content are we matching to each individual part of the buying cycle. If we're in that inspiration phase, it is about showing your experience. It's that slow-mo of the chef slicing a steak. It's that inspiration piece, right? That is relevant content there. That doesn't need offers. It doesn't need a big list of facilities, because we're not at that. The customer is not at that point yet. However, when you're talking about listing facilities and offers, that content is going to be relevant, but just not at that phase. That the facilities and the informational content is probably best suited for someone that's actually already touched the brand a couple of times. So we can use remarketing, retargeting. We can use remarketing lists for search ads to be able to showcase that kind of thing. But I guess, Giannis, my point here is that we need to be running Facebook ads that cater for each individual section of the buying cycle, not just a facilities focused campaign or a kind of inspirational or a price led campaign, because all of them have a place.
They just have a place at different points in the buying cycle. And the way we can get the message, the right campaign to the right person, is through being clever with retargeting and making sure that we're making sure that, let's say someone actually views a particular room type on our website. Are we showcasing that room to them when they're in Facebook as a remarketing campaign? Most people don't do that. Most people don't remarket on a product by product basis. Most people just do branded remarketing. So they might have, okay, well, I've gone to, the Stafford London, and then I see a Stafford London ad. But actually, really, what I need to be doing is, if I'm looking at the junior suite, I need to be seeing an offer for the junior suite. And that, again, comes down to this synchronization, this hookup between availability, inventory, and rate, and the advertising platforms. So you can already list your rooms, and you can do this smart retargeting, this real product-based retargeting. So that part, definitely super facilities, offers, do what you want to do. But that's relevant to that piece. But it's not relevant to the awareness and inspiration piece. And the tricky thing is, if you are then told by if your budget is set based on your ROI and will back the campaigns that work, but not the ones that don't work, is your awareness ROI is always going to look worse than your offer-based ROI. But it's no less important, because you still have to put the groundwork in, basically. I don't know if that answers your question, but if we can do do a thing called customer journey mapping, which is where you make a matrix, and I'll see if we can send a template out after this, maybe, because we've got a template that might be really useful. But it goes from research, decision, purchase, post-stay in the columns, and then down the side we have what are all the different considerations, the worries, the hurdles, the digital touch points that each customer goes through for each of those things. And what that does is it gives us our content strategy, because as long as we're answering every single box with content at the right time and the right place, and we're targeting these people in the right way, then yeah, you cover all the bases. So facilities in some ads, great. Inspiration in some ads, also great. Just got to be the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we just had a question come in from Daniela. Is is retargeting expensive to do?
Well, the nice thing with retargeting is that you can you control the price, right? You bid whatever you're happy to spend, and that's the part that is quite handy. What we do for very limited budgets, if someone's really limited on a budget, we will tend to do retargeting from a brand awareness, and just we'll treat it almost like a newspaper ad, and not have calls to action on the ad, and just treat it like a brand recall campaign. So in the same way as a newspaper, you can't physically click on it, but you get a lot of eyeballs. If you put a remarketing ad out and don't put any calls to action in it, not many people will click on it, but you'll get a lot of eyeballs. And so, but you won't pay for that click. So actually, yes, you might spend a bit, but you'll be getting hundreds of thousands of views on it without actually paying for many clicks. So it's quite a fun way to build brand awareness, because you can see that your ad has been seen by a lot of people. It just hasn't been clicked because you've artificially built the fact that you don't want them to click on it. But then again, it all comes down to a cost per acquisition. So what you really need to do, and the equation is, if your conversion, let's hypothetically say your conversion rate is 5%, probably won't be that high, but let's say it was 5%, and our average transaction is £400. Okay, so therefore, how many? I'm not going to do the maths in my head because I'm just not that clever. But therefore, how many users do we need to generate X in revenue? What cost per acquisition are we happy with? 10%, 5%, 12%, 20%? I don't know. That's for you to decide. And that gives you your cost per click and how much you are happy to spend. And that's what you need to bid on. That's where you need to go. And then and then that's your starting point. And then you flex it up and down based on production and based on optimizing the ads over time. So it becomes a very scientific process of what do I need to sell? What's my average transaction value? What's my conversion rate? Therefore, how much can I spend on a click? And that gives you your answer.
All right. Well, we got a lot of good information. Thank you so much for that, Harry. I wish I was able to take notes because we got a lot of gems. I'm going to have to rewatch this episode and start scribbling furious notes for my clients. But that was fantastic. So who are we giving the mug to is the important question and the final one.
Right. Let me just have a quick look at the questions coming in. I think just because it's right top of the mind, I think Liliana's one of, do you think digital marketing is becoming a necessary skill in revenue management? For me, that's a really important one. I like that question. So well done, Liliana. You get the mug.
Congrats, Lilian.
All right, Liliana. Don't forget, you have to pick who you want to see every morning, me or Christina. That's the toughest question of the day.
I don't make that decision for you, so that's on you.
But thank you guys for joining us another episode of Revenue Hacks. Great chat today. Be sure to join us next week on our show where we're discussing mystery shopping. Are we still doing it? Should you still be doing it? And we have a special guest, Stephanie Ledger of First Rate Hospitality for that show. So we will see you then, and come prepared with your questions, and be sure to get a mug. See you then.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
My world will never ever leave you and I don't see what all the fuss is about. I didn't know I had to watch my tongue. Now you know that I'm a loaded gun. Yeah, you know it's true. I'm too taboo.